Hello there, and welcome to an all-new episode of FPL Expectations with me, Craig. Today we're starting a new segment, and we're going to call it the Big Debate. With me in the studio, we have James Stu and the Baby Whales. James Stu, top 2,000 in the world last season for FPL.
10,000.
10,000, tell them. Well, it's close enough. And we've got the Baby Whales. Two-time top 20 rank in the world, and also League champion twice.
Once, 2000, 2014, 2015, if I'm not mistaken. Or was it 2013, 2014? I've just been in the top 10 so many times I just can't lose count.
All right, so we've got a few topics that we're going to debate on today. James versus the Baby Whales. We're going to kick it off with the eyeball test. Now, this is something that was mentioned on Twitter maybe sometime last week, and I did tag you in it, James. And it's a bit of a tough one, the eyeball test. Some FPL managers, from what I understand, are not big fans of it. They choose not to watch the game. They're purely stats-based and see a review of the match. And I know your stance on this. Do you want to explain a little bit more about where you stand on the eyeball test? Does it help your FPL team or does it not?
I think it does not. I think, in my opinion, if your sole priority is to be successful at FPL, that you should not watch a single game. That is what I strongly believe. Just because I think you're bringing a human element into it that doesn't need to be there, and you get emotional about things. I see Keon formulating his case.
But when you say emotional about things, do you mean like, when you're, in terms of the club that you support when you're watching them play?
No, I think that memory is imperfect, and so if you're watching a game, if someone has a tap in, they fuck it up, you're gonna remember that big time, and you're gonna hate that guy, and you're gonna think, I'm never gonna have this guy again, or and you give much more weight to some things, and you completely forget the times when your player wasn't even in the chance, and why was he not there? And I think that I'll give you an example. Like for me last year, I only watched 2 games. I watched City against Chelsea, and I watched City against Wolves. And in City Chelsea, I only watched it because I captained De Bruyne, and my baby wouldn't go to sleep. And he was so lucky to get anything out of that game. When he scored, I think it was a deflection. And I remember thinking, I was so lucky there. I will never captain De Bruyne again. And because I'd never seen any of the other games. And that was the first time I thought, every De Bruyne game must be like this. Bullshit. And I cost me so many points. And then the second game that I watched was City against Wolves. I think it came immediately after Wolves played in Europe, and they had a terrible record immediately following a European game.
After.
Yeah, and it was at the Emirates, and I brought in Mahrez and Captain Mahrez, and fucking Wolves won, and I was like, City are trash. I'm never going to captain a City player again. And obviously it was complete nonsense, but it's just because I watched those games, I made emotional decisions, which is to me.
Which do you think was detrimental to your team?
100%. To me,
because you still finished with a decent rank.
In spite of that, in fact, I was I would have finished top 5K if not for other things. But if not for I think all you need is stats and heat maps. Get everything you need to know. The only thing that I think you lose is you don't get to tell if a player fucking busted a gut to get into the box, or did he just saunter there lazily and the ball found him on the edge of the box. I think that's the only thing you miss is like effort. But otherwise, I think stats and heat maps, everything you need to know.
So I'm going to come to you, Baby Wells, and both of us over the years we've watched a lot of football matches together. I know your thoughts on this, your thoughts and feelings on this, because I mean, we talk a lot about football. We watch a lot of football games, and we analyze players in FPL terms while we're watching the match. What are your thoughts to James? He's not a fan of the eyeball test. He's not someone that watches matches. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, to be completely honest, I found almost every sentence he said rather fascinating, and each one can be debate debate in itself. Now, the fact that you can actually watch a football game and say, "Wow, Kevin De Bruyne is lucky when he finished as not only the best Premier League player as voted by the Premier League, and also he has the fantasy stats to prove it." First off, I would just like to ask James, what kind of games were you actually watching in the first place? Because I'll be really
Are we allowed
interested
to
and
ask people
keen to know.
questions? 'Cause I can ask you
Yeah,
what
no,
you
no.
finished.
I think I'm just posing a hypothetical one because obviously, I mean, there's either two ways, right? There's two ways to think about it. Either you're watching the wrong games or the wrong replays, or you don't know how to play football. I believe it could be a blend of both. But so okay, so I think that puts that to bed. Now, I think the big issue with metrics or advanced metrics is, I suppose, the improper usage of it or incorrect interpretation. I mean, if you have numbers but without any role or context, how can you put the pieces together? As rightfully said, you watch a game, right? And the thing, as James said, you can't tell whether a guy busts a gut to get into the box, and that would arguably tell you a lot more rather than stats. For example, James, would you more okay? Uh, I'm not going to name who, but over the weekend there was Liverpool versus Chelsea. No, Liverpool versus Arsenal, which I think we had a great performance there. I think the best team definitely won. Not being biased at all. And there's an unnamed player, and he's a great player to be fair, that had a 95% pass rating. Would you get that player, and drafted him to your team? I'm not going to name who it is, but I would say that's amazing. That's an amazing stat against the best Premier League team, and he managed to pull off a 95% pass rating. Would you draft him into your team straight away? I
No.
mean, you're going to have to look at him. You're sending your scouts to look at him. I'll tell you who it is. It's Mohamed Al Neni.
Well, how many
Straight away.
points?
It's not even Price. Not even Price in the Premier League. But according to James Scouts, he's going straight into your team. So that's what I'm trying to say.
When did I say I cared about passing stats?
No, I'm just saying it's just one of those stats and metrics, though, right? At the end of the day, his heat map was good. He played in semi-advanced positions. But fact of the matter is, if you're just looking plain stats and without looking and using the eyeball, you don't have any context to it. Would I say the eyeball test is arguably more important than statistics? No, but I definitely won't rule it out. I'd say there's a percentage, maybe 65 to 35%, if anything.
So you feel there's a need to incorporate the stats with the eyeball test rather than just doing one or the other?
Absolutely. I think stats definitely tell you a hell of a lot. As James rightly pointed out, heat maps are arguably very important too. But there's no way, if you're taking fantasy seriously, there's no way you're gonna skip an episode of Match of the Day, because I still think you need to look at players, and if you understand football like you and I do, Craig, you're definitely gonna interpret that
Can I ask
much
a question?
more.
Did you take fantasy seriously last season?
You know what? To be honest, at the end of the day, I think it just moves on nicely to our next topic: luck versus skill. So yeah. So we'll just transition it from there.
So with this luck versus skill, it's, I think captaincy comes to the front here, because over the weeks we see, like you say, lots of different stats, lots of theories on who to captain, form, quality of opposition. You got to take all these into effect. But James, how convinced are you? I'm going to come to you first. How convinced are you that it's more luck than skill, or is it the other way around?
So Kyung always gets the last word, is it? All right.
No, I can go first. All
right, go, baby.
All right, fine. I think going on about what I said about, I think over the past 10 years and since the development of fantasy football, you have seen an enormous amount of data being shown, and whether you like it or not, whether you watch YouTube or you're a fan of fantasy football, or whether you want to read scout reports, it is rather comprehensive. I mean, we have stats for expected goals, so on and so forth. Stats where it doesn't, it takes into account a lot of assumptions, yet plays a big part for people choosing their fantasy teams. I suppose with this quantitative analysis, I suppose the pure fact that having these statistics is hard to ignore if you are playing football, fantasy football, whether you're a casual fan or not. I believe there is arguably a bit more skill to luck. Now the question is, how much of a luck does Baby Wales think plays a factor? I would say quite more than a lot of people think. Why? There's a team I played with 4 or 5 years back. I remember. I'm not going to name names, but he wild carded into Ashley Barnes and Danny Ings up top. And that was his walkout. And if I can't mistake, he captained Ashley Barnes as well. And Burnley fighting for relegation and whatever else. I thought that was an interesting maneuver. But bugger out, I think Ashley Barnes managed to get 2 assists with Ings banging in the 2 goals. His captaincy paid off, and I think he was a top 5 scorer for that week. So at the end of the day, I think luck does still play a part, but skill, obviously, skill researching injuries, skill researching the availability of players, skill researching whether or not players' positions will be affected, so on and so forth. And then if you break it down as well, having that insider information of, I think if I'm not mistaken, the fantasy champion won because of luck, where he captained KDB versus captaining Sterling. So I think, well, fair play to him. But I think if you have that added information, there was a lot of controversy, which has been now fixed by the Fantasy Premier League, because a lot of people were getting insider information before the team sheet was out, and then they managed to just reconfigure their team. So, do you have the skill to do that in the first place? I think that's rather important, and I think that played a lot to luck. So, I would still say skill is arguably more important, but there is always luck involved.
And James?
2 things, I guess. The first thing is I wouldn't, if I was talking about skill, I wouldn't be thinking about research or awareness. To me, skill would be, planning your rotations or looking ahead to future fixtures or, strategic hits, but in any case, no. I mean, in terms of luck versus skill, I think I personally think that people are looking at it wrongly, in the sense that I don't think you should be looking at it vertically. I think you should be looking at it horizontally. So, not how much is skill and how much is luck, but rather, I think it's like World Series of Poker, where it's a hugely skillful game, but you still need to suck it out like 3 or 4 times to get to the final table. And so, like, if you say maybe to get top 50K is skill, to get top 30K is skill, but to get top 10K, I think the difference between being top 10K and being top 30K is there's a lot of luck there. I don't think there's that much disparity in skill between a top 10K guy and a top 30K guy. Maybe they just got lucky on a couple of decisions. Like I remember a few seasons ago, maybe last year, I wanted to get Alonso, but I only had enough money for Azpilicueta, and then Azpilicueta ended up way outscoring Alonso over that period. And like micro decisions like that, I think it's crazy to suggest.
Can I bring you? Sorry to interrupt, James. I'm going to bring you back to a game week, which and I'm bringing back because obviously Baby Wells is involved, and he was a recipient of the rewards from this
Antonio.
Game. Antonio 4 goals. And correct me if I'm wrong, Baby Wells. In your squad, you had Antonio 4 goals. You had Sterling captain hat trick, and you also had Troy Deeney up front with 2 goals,
Absolutely.
which were 2 pens. And I mean, just coming back to you, James, just based on those 3 players. I mean, I'm not even including the rest of the team. I think you got a clean sheet with Pope or whatever it was. But I mean, just based on those 3 players, I mean, we knew Antonio was a player on form. I mean, he's never scored 4 goals in his career, let alone a hat trick, I think. I mean, he's not an out-and-out striker. I mean, these are things that, this is where the luck kind of element comes into it. I mean, you expect him to get maybe a goal or 2, but to score 4, Okay, Sterling hat-trick, you can argue maybe that was something. But then again, I go to Troy Deeney and 2 penalties in the game. It's just things like that which really re-emphasizes the luck kind of element on it.
I mean, I think that was a crazy week because, I mean, I think that almost pushed Baby Wells into the top 100K. Was it something like that? It was a massive week for him.
From nowhere.
Crazy. But I remember that, was it week 36 or 30? It was
it's project restart, so it was about 30 something. Yeah,
it was late, right? And I remember because for our mini league, I think I'd been leading for maybe half the season, and then because of that week, the guy in second had Antonio, and I lost my lead, and it was a horrible weekend for my wife. It was a really bad mood. But then when she would say to me, "Did this guy get lucky?" I couldn't bring myself to say he got lucky because Antonio was a good pick. Just 4 goals was nonsense.
Yeah.
But
that's what luck comes into it, though.
I still didn't call that luck. And even the Troy Deeney 2 goals thing, I don't know when Baby Wales brought him in, but I had been looking at Welbeck myself because the fixtures for Watford were good. So it was a value transfer. Like I was going to get him the week before. And it wasn't that he's so good. It was that it was a value transfer because he had 3 weeks of good fixtures, I think. So even that one. Sorry?
After he scored his bicycle kick.
I don't watch the game, so I don't know how he scored. But I still wouldn't bring myself to call those. I mean, Antonio, that hurt bad.
Yeah.
But it was not a bad pick. He was on form. They were playing a shit team. He was being played out of position. I can't. Even though I was on the wrong side of it.
But the element that I'm going on is like it was a good pick, and I think a lot of people did bring him, but you'd expect him to maybe get a goal or 2, but to double that and get 4, I mean that is something that you can't really see coming, especially for someone who's never done that.
If you just get the points and you're like, that was a good pick, I'm okay with that. If you get it and you say, well, no, I expected him to get a hat trick, then that's okay.
All right, we're going to move on now to the coming season. I'm going to look at it. We've got a lot of tasty players coming into the Premier League this season. Obviously, Chelsea have been very active in the transfer market. City, not so much. They've added a couple of faces to their squad. I don't think their spending is done, obviously, with the rumours that Lionel Messi might be coming to the Premier League. But we're just going to do a quick little matchup between the Chelsea team that we're looking at and the City team that we're looking at. Both have prospective signings coming in. Kai Havertz for Chelsea and also Lionel Messi for City. But I mean, when we're ranking them against each other, I'm just going to do just throw a few names out there. I'm looking here like you could Aguero versus Timo Werner. I'm looking at Ziyech versus Sterling, KDB versus someone like Kai Havertz. I mean, we've talked about those 3 Chelsea names and they're new entries into the Premier League versus seasoned Premier League players. I mean, is it worth a gamble for gambling on names like Kai Havertz, who comes with a big reputation, or do you go for the seasoned pros in your KDBs? Because thinking of price points, they're all going to be in the higher price range. Maybe we'll start with you.
I think it's a really interesting debate. I mean, Chelsea versus Man City, and to be fair, I think Abramovich has really done quite well in the market. I mean, getting Timo Werner in for £50 million, I think it's quite good. And then you have Ziyech coming in for reported 33.8 or 33.3. Yes, Eredivisie is rather weak or whatever else. I suppose that's the only caveat. But I still think they're really strong players. And if anything, they will have that surprise, I suppose, that surprise or the unpredictability of it. But based on just my general feeling, I think Chelsea have done very well. And of course, at centre back as well, they brought in a great signing in Thiago Silva. Probably giving another year for the Zumas or the what's his name?
Tomori.
Tomori, yeah,
Rudiger.
not Rudiger. I think he's well overrated, but like Tomori to just groom themselves. So I think coming in on a short-term contract. So I think overall they've addressed their issues, and they still manage to retain players such as, I think Jorginho is still there. Mason Mount is coming into his own second season. But as what James said earlier in I think in previous show, the pressure will be on Frank Lampard. I believe he will be one of my top 3 managers to be sacked early on. But I just wish him all the best, I suppose.
Yeah, and James, coming to you. I mean, Chelsea assets will considerably be cheaper, considering that they're new to the Premier League. Are they ones that we should be looking out for, including in our first game week 1 teams? Obviously City are playing in game week 1, but long term, do you get them in on the cheap quickly, or are City assets still the one to go for?
I think everything that Baby Will said was pretty dead on. I agree. I mean, I will never back a manager whose lifetime achievements are taking Derby from 6th to 6th and Chelsea from 3rd to 4th. That's it. So I don't think he's. I think I would agree completely with Baby Wills that he's going to be under massive pressure, and he would be on my top 3 to be fired early as well. If not for the fact that I think he has just so much goodwill and support at the club, I think they'll give him a lot of time. Okay. But I mean, that's my hot take, is that I think Chelsea are going to have a disappointing season. But I do have Werner, because I think he's underpriced, and I think that Chelsea
I think a bit of word on Werner as well. I mean, you can only base on what he's done in the past. Now, I'm looking at the table. I mean, he has 28 goals, 8 assists. Expected goals would be 1.6, and that's in the Bundesliga. So, and I think if you look at him using the eyeball test, he does.
You just did the stats.
No, I'm just saying, he's a beautiful player to watch, because not only is he putting in the goals, leading the Bundesliga, but also he manages to drift out to the wing as well. So he does provide that width, making those late routes, which allows those Mason Mounts to get in there, so on and so forth, and even an N'Golo Kante if he's fit to run into the box. So I think it gives them a lot more flexibility. At 9.5, I wouldn't say he's massively underpriced, but there's someone you need to take a look at. Now, is he a guaranteed starter? I don't know. Maybe I can throw this back to James. I'm not too sure. But if you look at Giroud, who's aging, I mean, of course, Giroud has pluses to the team, but he's not going to get you 20 goals a season. Tammy Abraham, I don't know how 7% of people own Tammy Abraham in their team. So I think those 7% should just give up right now and just call it a day. But that's WTF. And now with Werner coming in, I think he's just going to fall down the pecking order, really. So I don't see it. I don't think he may play the full 90 minutes. But I'm expecting him to at least lead the line for Chelsea. And if he doesn't, he's going to be moved out to the wing anyway, so to the left or whatever. So I think he's a safe bet at 9 points.
I mean, I know Ziyech got injured against Brighton over the weekend, but I mean, his stats coming into the Premier League, obviously, it's not the same kind of quality, but 8 goals and 16 assists in 27 games. I mean, those are pretty decent stats. We've seen him play in the Champions League and do well. So we know against quality opposition, he can still turn it on. Yeah. I mean, he's at a nice price as well, isn't he, James? And when you compare his, I think he's at 8 million compared to someone like Raheem Sterling, who kind of plays off the wing as well, or your Riyad Mahrez's. I mean, this is someone that we can see starting week in, week out for Chelsea, considering he's injury free. Do we still, like I said, I still keep going back. Do we go with the more premium assets in City? Or do we take these guys on the cheap early on?
I know this is a Chelsea versus City segment, and you're going to laugh at me for what I'm about to say, but I already have an 8 million midfielder, and it's Dele Alli.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, God. Oh, God.
I mean, I've seen a few people talk about him recently on Twitter. I think the main concern with that is just how Spurs line up and the kind of position that he plays, because obviously Dele Alli, you get the best out of him when he's in that 10 position, but if he's going to be shafted out wide or something like that, That's going to make a big difference to the way that Spurs line up. But we're going to move on to goalkeepers now. And, this is another thing when building your teams. All right. Do you go for the 4.5 rotation keepers, or do you go for a premium 5.5 to 6 million set and forget for the season? Maybe who else?
I tried the 4.5 and 4 last season. So I did the Button and I can't even remember his name.
Ryan.
Yes, Ryan double up. I suppose it did okay. It didn't leave me with much concerns. But once again, would I have better efficiency if I just spent a bit more either on a 4.5, 4.5, and 5? I think for this season, I think we have quite a few options at 4.5 and a lack of options at 4, besides Nyland, who may be touted to start. But once again, for Aston Villa, if Tom Heaton is back, then Nyland's just completely out. So you're wasting a transfer just to get that out for a 4.5 anyway. So I don't know. I mean, I feel that I'm gonna have 2 rotational keepers this year. And that's largely thanks to Emi Martinez of Arsenal, because if he's coming in at 4.5, I think I definitely need to look at that. So my gut is for this year, I will go with the 4.5 rotations. I mean, you have Alex McCarthy from Southampton, who I think is based on Southampton's fixtures, great fixtures as well. Okay, at 4.5, and I think you have Sam Johnston of West Brom, who I'm looking at. Maybe not for the whole season, but if you can rotate him, his first 3 games I think are quite good. And if West Brom were to keep a clean sheet, it would be in those games. So you have a lot of options in 4.5, which I think you can play with this year. Yeah.
Yeah, and James, just little look into your squad in that goalkeeper section.
Yeah, same as Kyung. I think I'll go rotation to start, but I think for me the decision usually comes down to I'll always go 2 4.5 rotation, and then it'll be a question of do I need to squeeze an extra 0.5 is there a player that I really want that I'm short 0.5, and then I'll go 4.5 and 4. But then later on in the season, I think maybe around the second wild card, by then usually some baller ass goalkeepers have emerged. Last season it was Hendo and Pope, and at some point around that time you have to get one of those guys into set and forget, because they just become too big of a points liability if you don't have them, I think.
Yeah.
Pope fucking destroyed me at the end of last season.
I'll tell you that. I mean, I think I've seen quite a few drafts with Lloris already lined up at 5.
Yeah, I've seen that as well.
That looks quite sexy as well.
Is he at 5 or 5.5?
I'm not too sure. I think he could be at 5, but I may be wrong.
He's at 5.5.
5.5.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. But yeah.
Going on to the defense now, and going to talk about a player who, I mean, his ownership should be through the roof, as it is every FPL season or every Premier League season. Can you afford to go without Trent Alexander-Arnold and boost your midfield and attack with the spare money? James.
Oh, that's my son. That's my firstborn. He should be in everything. I call him Salt and Pepper Trent, dude. Add him to everything. He should be in everything. No question.
Yeah, every team, yeah?
Every team.
Every team. Straight to it. And Baby Wells?
Yeah, I think there's really, I mean, top scoring defenders in the FPL, 210 points. That's ridiculous. And then you got Robertson and Van Dijk behind that, and then Matt Doherty, who's gone to Spurs. By the way, I don't know how Spurs pulled that off, but maybe you can have an own show about that. But my God, that's probably the signing of the season. But
million as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. What the hell? Okay, but I mean, that's signing a midfielder. Anyways, I think looking at Trent, he's currently in 54%. 54.5% of most fantasy teams right now. So I think that kind of puts paid to this debate. But look, he's been directly involved in a lot of Liverpool's goals. I think 28 assists, 5 goals in 2018, 2019, and then just building on from there. So I think it's just ridiculous, the amount of output he has. So
I also like that he's very aware of assist stats, and he's in. It seems like he's in this little competition with Robbo, and there's some players where you don't know are they going to go for it. He's going to go for it.
Yeah. I get that feeling. And Liverpool
28
are
assists in 2 seasons. In 2 seasons for a defender, 28 assists. That's ridiculous. You'll buy a midfielder for that.
Yeah,
at 7.5.
Yeah. All right. Going to quickly move on to the last debate that we're going to have tonight, and it's Kane or Vardy.
Yep.
Like I'll go.
All right.
For me, I think maybe Baby Wells will remember a night.
Oh God.
A season and a half ago, where we met for dinner and over too many drinks decided that we were gonna bring in captain and bring in Kane. Sorry, and did we triple captain? Can't remember.
No, we didn't. But
no, we just we took a hit. We both took a hit to bring in Kane.
In Singapore, yeah.
That's correct. Yeah. And needless to say, it was a sad night, and I've never been back to Kane Town ever since.
You've never had Kane in the team since 3 seasons ago.
Never, dude.
Wow.
So for me,
that scarred you.
For me, it's Vardy.
Vardy.
Yeah. Although I don't like the fact that he's more expensive than Werner. I think that's weird. But of the three,
I mean, this will go back to what I said just now on the Chelsea assets versus City assets. The new players into the Premier League, I mean, they come in at slightly cheaper.
But I don't look at so we say Werner's, this is his record, this is what we can expect from him, but it's Bundesliga. But I'm not even I don't even look at that. I'm looking at the number of chances Chelsea create.
Okay.
So if it was Tammy, I mean, maybe not Tammy, but if it was anyone of any mediocre quality, I would be over that. Yeah, I mean, maybe even Giroud. I'll tell you what, like at the end, after we got that random that extra wild card after the COVID lockdown thing, Abraham was on I had Abraham, and I just made so many mistakes post lockdown that I never had a chance to take him out, and so he was on my bench every week after Corona till the end. He's another one. I will never go back.
I just want to say that this goes back to the skill versus luck thing, and I completely agree with James that if you want to win the league, you definitely need a massive amount of luck. Because if you're looking at Tammy Abraham, and I think he mentioned Danny Welbeck earlier on.
Yeah.
Seriously, if that's not luck, I just don't understand. Like what okay.
I don't want to start slinging shit, and then we'd be asking for overall rankings last season, man.
It's not about overall rankings.
That's not what it was about.
At the end of the day, like I said,
maybe couldn't Kane or Vardy for you?
Look, I was burnt that night, James, and we were. It would break friendships. We were sitting. I remember we were in Singapore and we were in Holland Village watching in a bar, and I kept checking my phone for updates because I think Aguero was playing. I think Brighton or someone. I don't know. And every half an hour, he just kept scoring goals. And we looked up at the screen, and it was still 0-0 at halftime. I think Harry Kane did manage one, but at the end of the day, I think couldn't put away 4, and that was my season done. I think, and that was James's season done as well. Now, going back to that, I think Kane at 10.5. I'm not gonna lie, it is very juicy. And counter to what James said, it's only because Vardy is at 10. So at the end of the day, and I like this conversation because then it goes back to the eyeball test in which James was burnt. But if you actually look at underlying stats, yes, Kane took a long time to start at the beginning of the season. So in 20 games, I think he scored 11 goals. Fast forward, Project Restart, and here you go. He's 7 goals in 9 appearances. Okay, that's joint top with Danny Ings amongst.
But if we talk about eye test, though, okay, serious question. If we talk about eye test, I actually did see some match of the day towards the end when it was getting when it was like, am I going to win on mini league? I started watching match of the day. He was pinging in fucking worldies. Like I don't want my striker to have to ping in worldies to score points. I want the constant flow of but I don't want him to have to ping worldies. Body's shits are put on a plate for him. That's what I want. Like a density of chances created for him to just finish. I don't want Kane to have to be swiveling around on the edge of the box, pinging it top corner. I don't like that personally.
I hear you. But I think at 10.5, I think it's too juicy to forgo, especially if only Vardy is only 0.5. Is only 0.5 away. And on that note, the other side of the sword, I mean, why consider getting Vardy when he's at 10, when you have Timo Werner at 9.5, you have Jimenez at 8.5, so on and so forth. And is Vardy going to come out with the same output? At the moment, I don't think Leicester have signed anyone to address that issue. They've got Harvey Barnes, who did exceptionally well. James Maddison, mediocre, but fine. His expected goals is high. So is injury ravaged, and they just lost Chilwell. I don't know. Down the left-hand side, it just seems a bit weak. Moving on to juicy players, though. You talk about Vardy, Kane, or Kun. Now, I think Kun is really overlooked this season, and I really do. At 10.5, he is, I'd say, slightly undervalued, not massively, slightly. 132 points last season, 16 goals, 6 assists. I think his average, and I did some research, and his expected goals every 90 minutes is 1.01. So every 90 minutes he plays, he's going to get at least a goal and assist. So at 10.5, if you're willing to take a punt, and if Messi's coming back, well, why not? I do not believe that Jesus is going to steal the show from him. I think Aguero did have a semi-injury hit season last season as well, if I'm not mistaken. But I think if he's back on form, he's really something to consider. And once again, going back to Kun and Aguero, I think Kun is definitely on my radar for now, based on the fixtures. If Manchester City do open up with, not open up, but if they do have a very easy fixture, whether it's a Brighton at home, maybe a Newcastle, or maybe one of those newly promoted teams. Yeah, I'm
just going to go through their. Yeah, I'll get their fixtures.
Might even sell Kane for Kun. That's how good Kun is. Yeah.
I give you another experiential anecdote. When I bought Kun last season, it was a really me and my wife were at a wedding, and it was a really difficult decision for me. I remember, I can't remember what I was going to make, but I had one option, or to get Aguero, and he was playing against West Ham at home, and nobody had Kun, and nobody had any avenue to get Kun, but I had 2 frees. And I didn't debate. I asked my wife, what should I do? My wife's a banker, and I gave her the statistical rationale for why I should do it, the opportunity cost, the potential upside, and all that. And in the end, she said, don't do it. Don't chase the risk. You're already the top. Just maintain. What did I do? I fucking did it. And so the next day, we were flying home from the wedding, and I was like, okay, we're going to have to watch this game because there's too much. It's been built up too much. So we got on the plane. It turned out the match was while we were on the plane. When we got off the plane, she asked me what happened. What happened? There was a tropical storm. The game got postponed. So Aguero decided to fly to Saudi Arabia, fucking party it up, and then come back. Dubai. 2 points, dude.
Well, fact of the matter is, I think Kane would have done very well if he played. So yeah.
It was just another experience that burnt me.
I'm just saying, fucking eyeball test. I mean, like, geez. I just want to say one more thing about Timo Werner.
Okay.
I just want to put it out there. Liverpool analysts rated Timo Werner higher than Sancho and Havertz in their football targets, by the way. So I just think between Werner, Kun, Vardy, Kane, Werner is definitely a starter for me. Between those 3, I'm starting off with Kane first because I believe of the easier fixtures, and Kun maybe transitioning to Kun after that.
Yeah, I agree on Werner, and I must say, caveat for me when I say Vardy is I'm going to wild card first week.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right, boys, it's been great having you on the show. Thank you so much for your time. It was our first episode of the Big Debate, and I think it went pretty well. But from you guys at home that are watching, we'd love for you to get on, comment down below, like it if you enjoyed the debate. If you do comment, do let us know what you'd like us to debate in the next segment or the next episode of the Big Debate. It's all for you. Tweet us, James Stews at James Stew, or me, Craig Moraes 11. And do let us know what you want us to debate. We've got a range of topics just before the season starts. We're not too far away. Do like this video if you enjoyed it. do give us a subscribe to get all your notifications every time we do a new video. From me, Craig Marias, have a good week.